Hello and welcome to The Actor and the Engineer. My name is Paul James. I am the actor.
And my name is Josh Knapp. I'm the broadcast engineer.
Here we go, Josh.
I'm so glad that you wanted to watch this movie and you pushed for us to talk about it because I hadn't heard much about it. It was very difficult for me to see. I had to drive to Chapel Hill, which is basically Timbuktu for me, to see it.
It's not that far.
It's not. But yeah, so I had the best movie going experience, and that now, especially nowadays where I didn't know anything about the movie other than it was about these two kids in like a reform school or, essentially juvenile prison type thing. And that's all I knew. And I knew it was in the 60s and that was it. So, which that's a very basic thing, but I didn't know anything about the filmmaking or anything. So was it the nominations or you already knew way before?
No, I'd heard about the film and I'd heard it was based on a book that won the Pulitzer. I'm always keying in.
Colson Whitehead.
Yeah. I'm always keying into, okay, well, maybe that movie first and then the book, or the book first and the movie. I'm always interested in switching and swapping and seeing which one is more interesting, because we've talked about this before. It doesn't matter what the medium is the storytelling is good. The storytelling is good. It doesn't matter. Yeah. So then the nominations came out. So I'm checking them off the list. And I, too, had the exact same experience. I didn't know anything about the film. You knew way more than I did. I didn't know anything. I assumed it was something to do with the 60s because of the style in the one trailer that I saw. The post. So
I didn't even see a trailer.
Yeah,
so
I don't
that's what I was
remember seeing a trailer either. I think I saw something in the Academy nominated these films, and there's a clip or something. And then the picture on the poster, which is a very interesting shot in the film, gives nothing away on the poster. And then I was so happy because my actual movie-going experience was great too. It was in a smaller theater. They actually have those reclining chairs in this smaller theater. They don't in most of the theaters or the theater I go to. Most of them are stadium seating without the recliners. There was probably 50 to 65 seats maybe. I would say more than half of those were filled. So a nice sized crowd, age range all over the place, culturally all over the place. And I was like, who's gonna mess this up? Who's gonna talk? And then I just slowly sunk into my chair. And the last thing I remember hearing from the audience was somebody came in right as the movie was starting and the reclining chair.
Yeah.
Other than that, other than the reactions to the film that we were all collectively having at the same time, nothing disturbed the film. Somebody got on their phone, but whatever. The film was so engrossing, and he structurally made a choice, and he stuck to the choice. And at first I was like, point of view. Oh.
See, I didn't realize that was such a man. I didn't see a trailer or anything, and didn't read anything about it. And so once I realized it was probably a couple minutes in, then I was like, this is happening. We're doing a first person narrative film and we're going for it. The last time I saw that was Hardcore Henry, which was it was just an assault on the senses. So, it was very video game like, and it just couldn't sustain for an hour and a half. It just couldn't. And so with this movie, the style, I found out afterwards, he teaches photography, had taught photography. And then afterwards I watched his documentary, Hale County, this evening. And it's great. He worked in a particular like genre, a particular feeling in that documentary, and he extended it to a narrative film, and the feeling was similar, just the kind of like lived in, natural light feeling. And you can't watch this without kind of like getting Terrence Malick vibes and those types of vibes. In fact, I even was reading about, some movies that he likes, and Tree of Life was one that he talks about. It's like, of course you like Tree of Life.
Shadows and Trees, oh my. Yeah.
Yeah,
Shadows and
exactly.
trees and leaves. Oh my, I kept thinking to myself as I was driving home, because
Yes.
there are tons of, and I love The Tree of Life. I love that movie.
Yeah.
And I have fought people over that movie for a long time now. They're like, dinosaurs. I'm like, you don't get it. I mean, not to
It's
sound
not just
condescending.
dinosaurs.
It's not just
everything.
but long story short with that, for anybody who's wondering, who's seen and doesn't understand the dinosaurs, for me, it was this power over another person that we see the father having over the son in the family has been going on since the dawn of time. That there's always somebody weaker who always begs down to, that's what the dinosaur scene was about for me. And then what ends up happening is the destruction of the world, which is a metaphor for how we destroy our relationships if we try to hold somebody down. Simple. They're like, dinosaurs, really? And I was like, yes, dinosaurs. Anyway, but, back to Nickel
Boys.
It's
also like you said, what 80% of every narrative or every movie is fathers and sons.
90%.
90%.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was watching something the other day and I was like, oh, yep, 90%. But that is changing, obviously, because
that's true.
Yeah.
But I think for me, it was great to live in the film vocabulary of somebody who this is his first feature length narrative film, and you're just like, back up, like this is, I can't wait to see what he does next. And it's a difficult subject matter, but I didn't feel like it was trying to be preachy or trying to do anything that was overt. And the reason why is because we keep coming, or I keep coming back to, and a lot of directors and even when hearing interviews with cinematographers, it's all about, like they control the point of view of the audience. And now he's kind of given up that control to be specific to what is happening in this character's life at this moment, and how are they experiencing the world. Whereas for us, we've talked about movies in the past, whether it's a horror movie that decides to only show you a portion of a room and then it, pans 90 degrees to the left and now all of a sudden it's a totally different movie. It's that kind of a thing where they're controlling our third party observation of a situation. Now we're in it, and I felt more connected to the characters, and that's hard for me to do. I would much rather be an external observer and be like, okay, you're over there and going through that, and I'll be over here and be safe. And it's been hard for me to at least to connect to the people who don't look like me, and I haven't had to go through anything close to what they've gone through and what their ancestors have gone through. And in this movie, it forces you into that space, and that was something that was revelatory for me. There's a scene, I'm not giving anything away, but there's a scene where in first person, this old sheriff, I guess, or just maybe he's just a white dude, is like poking on one of the characters in their stomach, and he looks down and he's poking on him with a cane, and you're just like, you can't not experience that. It's not anywhere close to what an actual person would experience in that situation. And there's none of the danger for me sitting in a nice heated movie theater, but it's closer than I've ever been. And that's something that movies can do. They can not transport you completely, but they can get you a little bit closer. And so I was like, that's amazing. They can do that.
Yeah, I'm the total opposite. I feel it, think it, live it, and experience it. And maybe because our lives are different on some levels, you and I are very similar on a lot of levels, but there are a lot of things that are very different. I don't know if maybe being overweight when I was a child, growing up gay, I don't know if what the qualification is that allows you to think and see the world in a different way. I'm not saying that always happens, but my empathy level is really high. And it might just be because that's just who I am, and that's just part of my nature. It might not have anything to do with any of the reasons why somebody might say, oh, because of this happened to you. This is, blah, blah, blah. I think the point of view shots in the beginning of the film are very interesting because there is a little thing in the back of my mind going, how long is this going to last? And am I going to be able to make it through the whole entire film like this? Because the only thing I don't think, I'll get the minor thing out of the way that I think separated me a little bit from the film initially, is the talking behind the camera. And I'm not sure how they were doing that. I think they're talking behind the camera, and that sounds different in one's ear. And that's because the director chose that because that's what we sound like in our own head versus how it sounds outside.
I think they're trying to replicate that.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think it totally worked. I think it pulled me out here and there. Listen, I'm going to do nothing but praise this movie from this moment on. So this is the small minor thing. It might have been more interesting for me if they had dubbed the voice in a different way. So he sounds like he's standing in front of the person. It doesn't sound like he's standing in front of the person when they're talking from the point of view. And it doesn't happen often because there's not a lot of dialogue that happens when it's the POV shots. But I will say this, and we are jumping a little bit ahead. Once I figured out where this film was going, when the cops pulled over the guy in the green car, I went, oh, wait. What's happening here? Oh, we've got a Cool Hand Luke situation going on. This guy's going to, oh, wait, okay. That kid's in trouble too. Okay, that tracks. That makes sense for the time. Oh, he's going to a juvenile delinquent farm. Oh, okay. Now I'm starting to understand exactly what's going on. And then it dawned on me, I was in fear of the POV at that point. I was like, what are we, this is not going to be good. But at those scenes, and some might call them cliche at this point, or unnecessary evil, no pun intended. Those scenes, the sexual abuse scenes, the physical abuse scenes, are shot in such a way that you know exactly what's going on, but you see little to nothing, and it's all inferred, and it's way scarier.
Exactly.
I'm getting chills just thinking about the one. It was so awful. And I'm not even sure what I was looking at. It was one of the sexual abuse scenes. And I'm not even sure what I was looking at, but my mind made it something that I'm not sure it was what it was on the screen, but my mind made it way worse. And all I could think of was, please shoot to the wall. Please shoot to somebody's shoes, because that happens a lot. The person going through that separates themselves. They have to disassociate themselves. But he doesn't, because he holds on it. And by the way, did we mention what the director's name is?
RaMell Ross.
Okay. Yep. I'm not sure if we said it or not, so I just wanted to make sure. Genius master, knows his craft already, and I cannot wait to see what comes after this, because I can't foresee whatever concept he comes up for his next film will be interesting, because he has the bravado to do this, and it could have fallen flat. And I know some people are going to discuss style over substance. They're going to say the style took away from the texture of the film. I personally disagree with that. So,
I totally disagree. I think it 100% heightens the film.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think that, like you said, with those particularly difficult scenes, you're right. The less you show, the harder it is, and the more you hear, the harder it is. And the sound design and the score is ominous, and it's needling, and it keeps on you all the time, even when you may feel like it's like there's calms. The score reminds you. It's constantly reminding you, even in the scenes where they're driving in and they've got one white boy and then the two black boys in the car, and you see how the white boy is treated, and you see how the black boys are treated when they go to their separate places, and you see how nice the house is for the white kids, and then like the shack.
They shake hands.
It's a
welcome, boys.
And that's where the score just kind of like cuts in, and it's just like it just keeps you on the wrong foot, and it keeps you off kilter. And that is the power of a score, and the power of music, and also the power of sound design too. when you only have one point of view to show, you can't do over the shoulder. You can't do, well, they kind of, in the middle of the movie when they started to transition to the other character from Elwood to Turner, they kind of did a little bit of like a back and forth, cutting between, but of course it's not an over the shoulder because it's first person. Have you ever seen Tokyo Story, the Ozu film? Yasuhiro Ozu. Okay, he's a Japanese filmmaker, very kind of like slow, plaintive films about relationships, a lot about family relationships. Probably his most famous movie, and the only movie I've seen of his, which I just watched very recently, was Tokyo Story. And he's kind of known for, that director is known for a direct address to camera. And initially it was a little bit unsettling where like people were talking to the camera, and it's done in it's different from what RaMell Ross does, because RaMell Ross goes all in and he's like, if somebody's talking to this character that the camera is representing, they're looking right into the camera and that's it. And we don't cut away to an over the shoulder, and we don't cut away to a side view of both of them talking or anything. It is all in. Whereas Ozu would switch back and forth between that direct address to the camera and then, other shots to establish the environment and those types of things. But there were multiple characters doing that. It wasn't just to a single character, but it did over time for me. It kind of brought me into those characters, and there, especially as the movie goes on, there's some really kind of deep conversations that go on between the characters, and it allowed me to connect a little bit more. And in this movie, it did the same thing, but I hadn't really seen that before. I mean, there's been times when people have talked into the camera.
Silence of the Lambs is hugely famous for it. Yeah, I feel like they're talking to the camera. In this, I felt like they were talking to the character.
Well, even in Fight Club, you've got, Brad Pitt talking to the camera while it, shakes, the film shakes in the gate, that kind of stuff. But those are little
very
bitty
specific reason for that.
Exactly. And it's a little trick that somebody pulls out of their bag once a movie or potentially. Yes. Yeah. Potentially once a movie. This movie, he's, like you said, committed, and all of the hurdles that he's placed in front of him, he figures out ways to go over them, figures out ways to differentiate between the 1960s scenes and the later scenes.
Yeah.
And
he jumps.
And he peppers those in, but that tells you that there's a difference.
Right.
Okay, these are the same characters that we're dealing with,
and
but
not
it's a different time frame.
But not for a split second does he lose you as an audience member.
No.
Not for a split second. First of all, the point of view or the first person camera shots, one might think that could distance you from the character. What it constantly did for me was remind me he's a little kid, because the camera angle is different when they're younger than when they're, well, actually when he's older, it's always from behind at one point.
It's that Snorri cam. It's the like that Darren Aronofsky used in Pi, and
right.
Guy
which I
used
think could have ruined it. It could have. If I hadn't fully accepted it at that point, the film would have gone completely off track for me at that point. But he stuck to it, and it made sense why he uses it when you figure out the semi-twist, if whatever you want to call it, that at the end, which I'm a little confused about, which we need to talk about. Yeah. But the point of view, in particular, in that sequence where they're going to the farm, the Nickel Farm, whatever they call it, Nickel Academy, you immediately it's immediately apparent he's a kid. He's in a situation out of his control. The angle out the car is perfect, sized to where the kid would be in the car. And it personalized it for me. It made it impactful to me. And then he does that thing somewhere, I'd say, 45 minutes into the film with the train, and the sequence with the train without.
Yes.
And then
that's our entry into the Turner character. I didn't realize it was a different character. Yeah.
But it doesn't happen again until later on. At the moment it first happens, you're like, wait, what? Okay.
Why are we doing a time lapse here?
This is pretty. Yeah. This is cool. This must be their escape. And then nothing. There's nothing before it. The lead, I can't wait to see the film again. I was going to say, I'd like to see it again. I will see it again, because I can't wait to see what happens before that and what happens after that, because it's I think it's nothing relating to that at
Well,
all. And then
to me,
smack, you're there.
Yeah, to me that was the transition. So what happens before that is there's the lunch scene between Elwood and Turner, and Turner sticks up for Elwood, and then in between that and it switching over to Turner's point of view for a while, that's when we get the time lapse. Right. So that's the beginning of Turner's story. That's him riding the rails there, which was
good.
It was good.
Oh, it's so good.
Which that scene was shot by RaMell Ross in a car. They made like a little like fake
that force thing you see
thing,
people looking
and it's
out
a forced perspective
airplane.
or something.
Yeah.
So well done, because it's like, oh man, how did you shoot that in a train? What did you like jump on it? No, they drove a car, and that specific time lapse that he uses, the time lapse methodology that he uses for that, he does the same thing in Hale County this evening, and it's done really well. It's on Criterion Channel if you've got it, or if anybody's got it. It's worth the watch. It's like an hour long. I mean, it's not very long. It was nominated for the Academy Award a few years ago. It lost to Free Solo. So, I mean, also a great movie. It was one of those things where RaMell Ross has been around for a while, but he has also kept himself busy by doing photography, by teaching. He teaches at Brown University. And so, I mean, he
in Rhode Island
stayed, I guess he went to RISD, Rhode Island School of Design, and he's been in academia for a little while. So,
Providence, Rhode Island, because I went to Brown. I didn't go to Brown. I went to visit Rhode Island. And
oh, cool.
The area was the college.
I bet it's nice up there.
It's really cool.
Yeah, I bet. So I was going to ask you about so the way that they shot this film is they had to wear this rig on their body, and the camera was 3 inches in front of their face, and they actually used the same cameras that were used in Top Gun Maverick, all the cameras that they had in the planes when they were doing all the stunt work in the planes. They came up with a way to decouple the sensor, the lens and the camera sensor from the processing body of the camera. So they had a baby camera in front and then a bigger chunk on their back, and that's what they used. I was just wondering if you have you ever had to deal with something like that? I mean, not a camera on you necessarily, but some sort of piece of wardrobe or something that made it difficult for you to perform?
No, not like that. So wait a second. Are you saying that the point of view person had the camera facing out from them that was 3 inches from their face? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And then the one from the back obviously was, no, I've never done that. In my small experience in working in movies, if you will, that camera is a big black void, and it just sucks you in, and you look at it and you just go, because you just don't know what to do. It doesn't add anything to anything.
So the harder part may have been being the person who, not the person wearing the camera, but the person in the scene facing the person with the camera.
Well, there's a whole conversation in, I can't remember I know Amy Adams is in it. Nicole Kidman might be in it. I forget the actors on actors or the actress round
table. It's the
table.
round table. Yeah.
And they were talking about that. And they were talking about how you have to give yourself over to the fact that the camera is there, but you have to forget that it's there and stuff like that. And Amy Adams is like, oh, I made peace with that a long time ago, because what other choice is there? You're in the middle of something and the camera goes, and you're supposed to be like, that didn't just happen. And you just have to deal with it. I can't remember who it was. It might have been Jodie Foster. I can't remember. It might have been Viola Davis. I can't remember. One of them said they accept the camera is there as part of the scene. They somehow incorporate it mentally into their mind that it's supposed to be there during the scene. That way it's not obtrusive and not in your face. Literally it is. But you learn to deal with it, because they were also saying that when the camera comes that close, you can see your reflection. So now you see your reflection, there's a big black box that gives you nothing, and now you're acting to yourself. And I was like, whoa. I can't even imagine. I've done some small student films and some small films and some independent things, very much on a small level where the camera has done wonky things and we've had to like be looking over the camera as it's coming up between us and stuff like that. And that's odd, but you just kind of deal. You just sort of deal. And my trick was to try to remember almost like it was a dance routine. Turn, stop, spin, move. It was more like a dance to me when the camera had to move than it was more of a dance partner. So in a way, I guess I did involve it in my mental well-being, if you will, of how to deal with it. But I wouldn't even begin to know what it would be like. You've seen those scare cameras with the people going through haunted houses with the cameras right on in their face and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I guess you just learn to deal with what you learn to deal with it. And the only thing I can compare it to is doing a variety of different stage works throughout my life. I've had people sitting all the way around me. I have people less than 2 feet away from me. I had to roll a joint and smoke a joint on stage. And I did that. Well, not a real joint.
Yeah. Just like a tobacco thing.
Well, it actually is like this herb cigarette that really smelled like weed.
Something?
And we got in trouble a couple times because people like told on us. We had like some kind of county commissioner or somebody come and check. I don't remember who it was. It wasn't the fire department because they're very particular too. Anyway, rolled it, lit it, and I see this hand reach out next to me to grab it from me and take a hit. And it's a person in the audience.
Oh, geez.
And I was like, dude, like, for real. I mean, I don't know how I covered it. I don't remember. I certainly didn't pay attention to what he was doing. But so I've had a variety of different things. I've worked on a rake stage before. That's really difficult. I've worked with audience members on the stage. I've worked with sitting in the audience and then coming out of the audience or coming out and going up on stage. I hate all of that. I don't mind doing it, but I don't like that fourth wall break. I don't like when people come out from the audience. The only acceptable play that do that is The Lion King, and that's because the animals come down into the audience. Other than that, so I can't imagine. And the emotional wealth and the emotional depth that these people go to, and I'm not just talking about Aunjanue Ellis.
I was gonna bring her up because she doesn't. If it's hard, you can't tell. If it's hard to interact with a camera right in your face, you can't tell.
No, you can't. And she becomes your aunt, and she becomes your mother, and she becomes your sister, and she becomes your brother, and she becomes your father, and she becomes your priest, and she becomes your counselor, and she becomes your sister. I mean, she becomes all of those things throughout that film. And because she is able to look right into the camera and literally address it as if it's another character. I don't know.
And she connects with both main characters too, which not a lot of the actors in the film, not a lot of the characters in the film get to do. And she deeply connects with both of the actors. You can feel it. Like it's the closest I'm going to get to ever be acting in a scene with Aunjanue Ellis-Taylor. You know, it's
15 years ago. Would you think that you had 3 Emmys?
Well, I mean, that has nothing to do with my acting skill.
I'm just saying.
I don't have any.
You say that there's probably. I mean, you never know. You never know.
Well, okay. That being said, I guess where I was going with that was that she's able to do all the things that she is normally asked to do in normal scenes, whether it's on a stage for a play or whether it's in a movie. But we're putting this in front of her, and same with all of the actors in this film, whether it's Hamish Linklater or the other 2 main characters who really are the ones that interact the most. We haven't talked about them by name yet, but it's Ethan Harris and Brandon Wilson. So I mean, those guys, even though they were only in half of the movie or whatever you want to call it, we're only on screen for half of the movie, they were still carrying those cameras for most of the rest of the film. So they were a part of the film and the filming, the whole way. So do you think, I mean, I texted you after I saw this movie, like just criminally missed Oscar nomination for RaMell Ross?
Criminally, no, but the list that they came up with makes me lean more towards that being, and I never use the word snub because I just believe some people get nominated, some people don't. But some of the people on the list this year, when you see Nickel Boys, you go, this guy should have made that list. He should have made that list. That said, Sean Baker just won the DGA, so I'm good. I've been waiting. What's taken? It's what? Hello? I've kept my mouth quiet about Anora other than loving it. All of a sudden now, I don't care why, it's happening.
It's happening, and it's the whole cyclical thing too. And it doesn't always happen this way, but a lot of times there'll be a front runner, and then there'll be something else, and then not last year. Last year was pretty locked and loaded, I think. But
most years are pretty locked and loaded. They go back and forth. The Golden Globes don't mean anything, then they mean something, then they blah 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 blah. But for Corbet not to win the DGA was a shock to people, and I kept thinking to myself, why are more people not saying Anora is a front runner? Anyway, this director of Nickel Boys made one of the best films of the year. It's on the list. It's in the adapted screenplay. That's a big possibility because we don't know. I know,
but it's very American fiction, and it seems like it's not an afterthought, but it's like a slot. It's from a first-time filmmaker, and it's like, here you go, writer-director. This is for you.
Talk to Quentin Tarantino. He has
and that's what Oscars he was the second time, but yeah,
he has 2 Oscars for original screenplays that everybody thinks he should have a director and a best picture at this point. He does not. So any recognition that's going to propel this movie to be seen by people and affect people and encourage people to watch it regardless of what it is, when that little gold statue, and we've talked about this a million times, when that little sticker goes on, well, now download
the streaming
when it goes on the little thumbprint, it attracts people. People go, oh, I didn't know anything about this movie. Like Poor Things blew people's minds once it became the Academy Award winning this and the Academy Award winning this, and then people saw it and they were like, wait, what? We didn't what? So it does not matter. I see what you're saying, and I don't disagree. I don't disagree with you.
And
there
it's
is
mainly
this
Jacques Audiard. I don't think he should be in there. I don't think he should be in that group. I think everybody. I've seen all the rest of them, and I've seen that one, and I don't think he should be there. So that's just like my opinion, man.
That's me having the whole conversation that we should have just had inside my brain, but not being able to say it out loud, because I do respect the fact that the 5 who are nominated are the nominees. That's the way that it is. But you are a free thinking, free speaking person. And I agree with you. I agree with you. I don't understand that movie. I don't understand his direction. I don't understand, and we're talking about Emilio Perez now. I don't understand the tones. I just don't understand that movie. I don't get what the director wanted. I don't get what the film wanted from me. And then eventually I go, oh, well, maybe it's this. And then I watch it again and I feel not completely different, but I get it on a different level. I absorb it in a different way. I cannot foresee ever watching that film again, to be honest with you. And now I'm making it a lot worse. And I also can't foresee watching it and thinking, oh, okay, now I get it. Now I get why this is nominated for 13 Oscars. I just think sometimes people get caught up in this machine, this spinning wheel of the Oscars, and it becomes this thing. The bottom line is this. If a person watches the movie Nickel Boys and then watches Emilio Perez, I would guarantee you that the feelings they get from one film are going to be completely different than the feelings they get from another film. And in the end, that's all that matters. And I'm sure there's somebody out there who loves the hell out of Emilio Perez. I would like to speak with them and find out, give me some of your joy. Explain this to me, because no,
I want this to be this movie to get as much, and it being nominated for Best Picture gives it the clout that all but 9 other movies this year don't have. So I understand that it's definitely been recognized, but I feel like when I'm putting together my top 10 movies of the year, there's like a chunk that's like at the top, and then there's other stuff that's below it for me. And no spoilers, but somewhat spoilers, Nickel Boys is in that top chunk. We've seen a lot of movies. We know how movies are made to a certain extent. We know what to expect. When I sit down in a movie theater, I know what to expect. And the movies that subvert those expectations and do it well and use craft and use the tools of the trade, those are the things that really light me up, and those are the things that really get me excited. If I make a music corollary, like I love music that follows particular rules. I also love music that assumes that everyone knows all the rules that they're supposed to follow, and then they figure out a way to subvert it, and they figure out a way to do it in a way that it has honor for things that have come before it, and it's still pushing forward and pushing the medium. And I think that RaMell Ross is doing that, even though he's probably seen Tokyo Story and understands the power of looking into the camera. And he's of course seen probably all of Terrence Malick's movies, and he's seen all these people, but that's not the story that he wants to tell. And that's not the exact way that he wants to tell it. So he's utilizing all of those resources, and he's showing us as an audience something from a different point of view than Ozu, and then Terrence Malick, and then Quentin Tarantino, and whoever else. And that's valuable. And I want to make sure that we give people the space to do that, and we give people the platforms to see it easily. It was difficult for me to see it in the theater. The good thing is Amazon Prime owns it, or MGM, or whoever owns it. So it's going to end up on Amazon Prime soon, hopefully. And I do hope that he wins the Oscar for screenplay, and that they just, like you said, plaster it all over the screen when you open up your Fire TV or whatever.
Yeah, but there is a satisfaction that happens when a year and a half from now, 2 years from now, 6 years from now, you overhear somebody saying, "Hey, I saw this movie, and it's really an odd film because it starts out, I don't know what that's called, when the camera is the person, and all of a sudden they start talking about this film because they were affected by it, and it takes you a good 5-10 minutes into the conversation to even realize what movie they're talking about, because they don't have the verbiage to explain it. All they're talking about is their feelings and what affected them, and how this and that and this and that and this and that, and how they told their friends, and how they watched it again, and how there is a thrilling, exciting feeling that happens when that occurs, and it inevitably does. Inevitably, a film like this gets seen, and with all due respect to the rest of the world, I'm not responsible to make people go to films. All I'm responsible for is knowing that this movie just affected me. And it just, I won't say lit me up, because that's a weird term for this. But that's the term we kind of use. I was just alive afterwards, and not necessarily in a good way. I didn't feel like joy and that kind of stuff. I did on some level, because the movie does have an interesting twist that keeps you excited, and all things must come to an end. And this story doesn't have the happiest of endings, but it's also about survival. And it's also about, man, when she says to him, the wife, and you think it's somebody else at the time, when she says, "Oh, but you have to get this story out. That's what you have to do." And I was like, oh, well, the story's out. And the story is now in me. And so when people ask me, and they ask me all the time, what movies, I went to rehearsal, what movies have you seen lately? "Oh, I just saw Nickel Boys." And everybody's like, "Oh, I want to see it." And I was like, it's a must. It's definitely a must. So that's where our responsibility of movie going people is, that we let it come into us, and we felt it, and it was impactful. Well, and then the message of the film, at least what I took from it, was survive at all cost, but then protest and speak out, and then tell your story.
Yeah.
Because is it based on a real story? Is it based
Yes,
on a
that's what I was gonna say. Is that like so what we're doing is we are experiencing a story, an engaging and profound way of telling a story that is fictionalized, and that story is now having me and you be like, oh well, it was adapted from a Colson Whitehead novel called Nickel Boys. Oh, well, that won the Pulitzer Prize. Wow, must have been a pretty good book. Well, maybe we'll look into that. Oh, look, that book was based on an actual school in Florida, and the school got shut down in whatever it was, 2015, and a few years after that, they started finding bodies on the grounds, and then after that, Colson Whitehead researched and wrote the novel, which I don't think is like I don't know if it's a factual, like completely factual novel, or if it's adapted from the story. It's a different school.
Yeah, because that would be a documentary.
Exactly. It was not a documentary, but either way. So that is bringing that history, that story, those people's lives that were cut short unfairly, and it's bringing that to the forefront, and it's getting them as much justice, hopefully, as they can get, and they're getting that out, and hopefully maybe helping their families to cope too. So it's useful, and it is something that's not us shying away from our history, and it's something that's going to engage more people and hopefully prevent it from happening again. I mean, that's the power of art, or can be the power of art. It can also be watching Tom Cruise hanging off of a biplane. It can be both, but it in this case, it has a little bit more weight.
Well, just the story to be heard, just being able to listen, watch the story, and these people's lives will continue in our minds and souls from this point on. That's the important part. Whether or not it's prevented, it happens again. I mean, history has a way of repeating itself. And hopefully it doesn't. But I mean, we have such short lives that we want to be remembered on some kind of level. Yeah. That's why we have the Oscars. That's why we have the Super Bowl. That's why we have, whether or not you will live to hear the history of yourself, obviously you won't. In 100 years, you're still in a book saying you won the Academy Award, you won the Philadelphia won the Super Bowl, blah, 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 blah. It's still documented, and that's what people want. People want validation. They want to be heard. They want their stories to be heard. Yeah. I'm just happy that a director made a choice, stuck to his choice, figured out, and I forgot what you said earlier on, but it was kind of brilliant about how he figured out the hurdles, I think is what you said, to that, to those choices.
Yeah, he placed those hurdles in front of him. He figured out how to jump over them.
Yeah.
Instead of being like, oh, well, I'm not going to do first person shooting the whole time. I mean, there's a really cool shot that I want over here that doesn't lend itself to that. But instead, he figures out ways around that to be able to, he like we were talking about, they still have kind of like multiple shots in a scene, but it's when the two main characters are talking to each other. That's
and he goes full-fledged into normal shots at that point. He doesn't do the point of view at all. He does it shot to shot of each of those characters. Okay, so let's talk about the ending really quick. So the Turner takes on the
Elwoods.
Okay.
Yes.
But why though?
Because here's why. So all right.
Spoilers.
Yes, spoilers. Spoilers for the end of the movie. Hopefully you've seen the movie up to this point. So Turner takes on Elwood's identity, and the reason that I came up with, because I've thought about it a lot, and I did a little bit of reading, but there wasn't anything that was like explicit that I could see. But here's how I see it: is that early on in the movie, the Hamish Linklater character, the warden or whatever he is, says you can go back to your family. But they don't allow the black kids to go back to their family because they utilize them to do chores for people, and then the school gets the money. But conceptually, the families could come and claim their children once they've paid their debt or whatever. So if Elwood can get to his grandma, then they can't take him back to Nickel Academy because he's already served his time. Early on in the film, when we see her hug Turner, when she gives Turner a hug because she can't give Elwood a hug because Elwood's
such
hurt
a
and all that
great
stuff.
scene.
Amazing scene.
And she handles that hugging the person with the camera perfectly.
Yeah. No, it's very well done.
So good.
So,
God, it's so good.
Yeah. Well, and that's a mirror of the earlier scene where she's hugging him, and that's so good too. So
it's the reverse though, because she's hugging him and pulls back. This is going towards him.
Going towards, you're right. Yeah. So with that, I think at that moment, like somewhere in the back of her mind, she's kind of like imprinting that he's a proxy for her grandson Elwood. And then it was very subtle, but you noticed her falling into dementia close to the end of the film. Did you notice that?
Yeah, no, she says something.
Yep.
Where
she says, I'm reeling back. I'm not going to work as often. I'm staying home a little bit more. And you can kind of tell that it's because she's becoming more forgetful or whatever they called it back. They might not have called it dementia, but that's ultimately where she was at. She was in a, somewhere on the path towards Alzheimer's potentially. So when Turner shows up at her house at close to the end of the movie and she opens up the door, she thinks that it's Elwood. She truly thinks that Turner is Elwood, in my opinion. And so she's able to do whatever she does to make sure that he doesn't go back to Nickel Academy. And then he probably very quickly hightails it up to New York to start life anew with Elwood's information, with Elwood's identity.
Yeah, but she says in that scene, she has that same moment the mother has in Dead Poet Society. He's all right. He's all right. She says something along the lines of, no, it can't be. He can't be gone. She says something when she's.
Oh, I thought when he was at the door, I thought she said, he's here. He's my grandbaby's here or something like that. I got to watch it again. I got to watch it again.
I thought, okay. Wow.
That's how maybe that was me just kind of like, cause there's those still shots.
I didn't think she ever knew that they had switched personal informations and stuff like that. And
maybe she didn't. And maybe she didn't. The weird part about that would be that how would he be able to get actual identification with his photo on it and Elwood's information unless he doctored it up. I mean, maybe he doctored it up himself, but it seemed to me that they were kind of representing that as a real document, as the driver's license or something that he had.
So yeah, now I'm starting. But isn't she in the room explaining to him this is where all his stuff was and blah blah blah?
You know what?
No, okay, I have to watch it again.
I don't know. Yeah, well, I'll have to watch it again.
It's interesting how we're both not sure what exactly happened, or your interpretation is different than my interpretation, but we came to the same conclusion about the film.
Yeah. And then the reveal of like it being a snorri cam, it being the camera behind with that kind of like God's eye view of Elwood is the reveal is that it's Turner being Elwood, but everybody's is talking to him as Elwood. Chicky Pete doesn't think twice when he says that he's Elwood. Or does he say that he's Elwood? That's hard. I can't remember that. He may not say that he's Elwood. He may just assume that he's Turner.
That he adopted his persona for two reasons. For the one reason that he would not let this person die in vain, that he became this person to kind of say, screw you to the academy, to the farm, this guy's going to live on no matter whether or not. No, I'm not going to say. I'm confused.
The farm doesn't care. I mean, it's not a. I think that Turner didn't have a family. Turner, just left his family and then got in trouble with the law. Whereas Elwood did have a grandma. But do you think it was too confusing, or it didn't kind of like?
Well, obviously it wasn't confusing to either of us, but we had two different interpretations of what happened. So. Yeah. In a way that I thought it is art.
Yeah, I thought it was, I got something from it. So that was something. And I've kept thinking about it. And like you said, it's like he can't, Turner, who is living as Elwood, can't let it go. And that's where the interspersing of the still frames early on in the film, you can't really tell who they are, what they are, but and they're so close up that it's just like splotches of black on white, or white on black, and you can't really tell what it is until as the film goes on, it starts to develop like a photo develops, and you get a better idea of what those images are and how they tie into the film. So RaMell Ross is throwing all kinds of questions at you from minute one. And then in my feeling of the film, by the end of the film, I felt like those questions were answered. But it sounds like maybe we answered them in different ways. So
well, I just Googled ending of Nickel Boys, and it says the ending reveals that Elwood Curtis is killed during an escape attempt, which is
you could tell,
devastating. That shot over his shoulder and you see him fall, but you never clearly see him fall.
Yeah.
It's
but
crazy.
no, hold on. But there's the another shot, which is mirrored shots from the beginning of the movie to the end of the movie. The very first shot of the movie is him as a kid on the ground looking up and playing with a little tree.
Right.
And in the end of the film, the last thing that Elwood sees is looking up in a field, and
oh my God, it's so good.
So good.
Is killed during an escape attempt from the reform school, while his friend Turner survives and takes on Elwood's identity, living a new life in his honor, essentially carrying on Elwood's legacy by fighting for justice against the abuses at Nickel Academy.
And he also,
which is what I said, right?
Yeah, and he also, you're right, and the character changes. I think that's the big thing, is that he takes on his identity, because the two characters at the beginning of the film, you have one character who has hope and who is looking to Martin Luther King Jr. and looking to the civil rights movement and is investing in it and has hope that there can be change, whereas Turner is the exact opposite. He's been pushed down his whole life, and he is in this situation. He has no hope whatsoever. But once Elwood ends up dying, and he takes on Elwood's identity, it seems like he actually does have enough hope to live a life and find someone to be with, and have the initiative and the follow through to keep digging to honor the people who are there.
Turner at the end has to turn into the optimistic or the realistic character. In order to get the strength to do that, he has to reveal to his wife his past and then tell her, because he's working on those notes or that book or whatever he's writing throughout the middle part of the film. So it's being written down, but he has to admit to his wife exactly what happened first. And then she helps out, because doesn't she say later on, they found another body or something like that? There's that. So I think it's massively impressive that we were affected by this film, that we saw the same film. We have two different understandings of what we saw at the end of the film, both valid, both have weight, both have substance. And in the end, it doesn't matter, because how we felt coming out of the film is what mattered. And I actually felt optimistic about the world. And, the world's not making me feel very optimistic nowadays. So it was a good thing, because there's a difference between realism and optimism, in my opinion, obviously. And I'm very much a realist. I'm very much, okay, well, sure, that could have a silver lining, but the reality of the situation is, well, maybe we should just be happy we got a cloud. Maybe we should just be happy that the cloud exists, and we'll worry about the silver lining if it happens. So coming out of that film, I'm not even sure optimism is the right term, but I definitely felt everything throughout that film. So bravo.
Yeah, I mean, me too.
Bravo.
I can't wait to see it again, and not because necessarily that the subject matter is all warm and fuzzy, but because I think with really great filmmakers, every time I engage with their art, I find something else in it.
Well, I think your music analogy early on is is a great one because music, you hear the same songs over and over again. But I have actually heard things in songs that I've been listening to for 30 plus years. And I'm like, wait, was that always there? It's like, oh, that's what that was. Wait, my mind made it this. So I think you feel and hear and see things depending on where you're at in your life. Yeah. And films and music and theater are all neon indicators of where my path in my life goes. And this was definitely a journey.
Yeah. All right. Last question. Okay. So we're in a very specific time frame where the movie has been nominated as a Best Picture and the Oscars have not happened yet. So there will be a scene from the movie that will be played during the Oscar telecast. What scene do you think should be played?
I have not had any kind of thought about that because normally it comes to me. It's one or two, in my opinion. It's either going to be her opening the door, and whatever she says, he's all right. He's all right. Whatever she says in that scene, it'll be that, because then they'll be like, yeah, see, supporting actress. Hello.
Right.
Let's smack you around a little bit. Give her her second nomination.
Please.
She had to be there when he punched Chris Rock.
Oh,
she had to, that's the legacy of her Oscars. Give her another nomination. And I could see a couple of people coming out of that category and her fitting right in, but I'm fine with all five. Or they're going to show the back and forth scene when you first see them talking to each other.
I kind of thought that's probably
or
what
it
they
might
were
be
gonna
clips.
do. The one that I would love to see would be Aunjanue Ellis-Taylor's scene cutting the cake and talking about her dad. It's not going to happen because it doesn't really have much to do directly with the two main characters. It is speaking about history and speaking about his family history and speaking about what happened before and what could happen in the future. And it's a very revealing scene, and it's so well acted and so well done. And back to the score and the sound design, her cleaning off the frosting from the knife while she's finishing that story is just
masterclass.
Ominous.
Yeah.
But
really
it's so
good.
well done.
Yeah,
so.
That would be a great scene. I change everything to that scene. That's what they should show. It might be clips though, because I don't know how they're doing it. I know they're bringing out at some point 5 actors to give out the best actor. Okay. I don't really like that because it takes away from the clips of the movie.
But they're describing they've done that a couple of years, right? Where they're describing one actor and then
I don't like it. They're not doing it for all categories, and you could fill in the blank later on, and we could talk about this later on and why they're not. But they're not doing it for all the acting categories. And there's a specific reason why they're not doing it for all the categories. But that's a whole nother subject. That's a whole nother show. But I like the clips. The clips kind of give you an indication of what the movie's like. And back in the day when I didn't get to see all the nominations, that was my only way into the film. And if you haven't seen any of the movies, you are on the sidelines and not understanding what's going on in the game. And I think that's a mistake. I think it's a mistake to come out here. So-and-so, Anthony Hopkins, Adrian Brody, this is your second Oscar nomination. How did you do that? No, we don't care about that. We care about what he did in the movie. So I think they should 86 it. And they might at this point, but that's the thing. And I think that it could be where they constantly show clips from the movies that are nominated this year. So you might see a bunch of different
that would
clips.
be cool instead of just like a single, like here's 10 seconds from this movie. You know, it's like,
But sometimes they do that. They'll show clips here and there. So we'll see.
Well, we can always hope. All right. Well, you can check us out on the web at actorandengineer.com. You can go to facebook.com/actorandengineer. x.com/actorengineer, and we're on YouTube. Just search for the Actor and the Engineer podcast. I'll see you next time.